If you have things that come up and you haven't been able to ask them on that form, please feel free to type questions into the chat, and we will try and get to those as much as we can as well. Obviously, we've got 1 hour for this meeting, so we may not be able to get through every question, but we'll try and answer the ones which are most common. Okay, so I think we're ready to kick off. We are going to start with a quick update from Liz on our preparations for next year, particularly in the light of the COVID situation, which I know that many of you are worried about and probably wondering how we're preparing for next year. So Liz, would you like to share your slides?
I will do. Sorry, I was just admitting people in the waiting room.
Ah.
So I will share mine. Just got to, can everyone see that?
Yes, I can see it. You might want to put it on
slideshow. Yeah, sometimes it decides to take a little while to go onto the slideshow bit. So bear with me on this. I did even try this before everyone arrived to make sure it did this, but I remember having a problem with this last time. So let's see.
Oh.
I presume everyone can see a black screen at the moment.
Yeah,
for this.
black screen at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, let's hope that this comes on quickly. I'm just going to admit the other people in the waiting room. And if it doesn't come on, I might have to do it on the normal. It's not very happy, is it? Right. I'm just going to try and reshare it, okay? And see if it works again. I don't know why it works in. See, it's just black again, isn't it? Okay, we'll do it. We might have to do it on slideshow. Yeah, this definitely happened last time. So yes. So for those of you that have watched the video from last time, or were at the last meeting, obviously we had a bit of an update then about plans for the campus and the projects during COVID. So I just wanted to give you a bit more of an update this time. So in this, well, the first thing to say really is obviously safety is a top priority in this. So we're guided by what comes out from the government and then what comes down from the college. So one thing to say is obviously there's a lot of world leaders of COVID at Imperial, which helps us with this guidance. But on a side note, may also be of interest to those of you perhaps who want to do a project in COVID, and we can talk about that later. So also to tell you now is that there is a COVID testing scheme, which is available for all research students and staff working on campus, and you can book 24 hours in advance and have a test. So if you're concerned before you start work or concerned at any time during your work, you can have a test and that. But as it says at the bottom, because this is a highly dynamic situation, guidance will change over the course of your time at Imperial. So obviously we're going to update our plans in response to this. So we have plans in place now, we have contingency plans, but it's going to be quite a fluid situation on this. So just to say that the course will begin on schedule in the autumn. So the first day of term is Monday, October the 5th. We're putting plans in place for our induction. A lot of you will receive offer holder letters with some more detail in, but our actual induction on our first day will be online. And then we're trying to work out to do some face-to-face sessions on campus, if possible, with those of you that are able to come on campus. Because the campuses are reopening. The labs have reopened as well, most of them, not to full capacity. They have social distancing in place, often a rota system, obviously the appropriate PPE. And as I say, we can talk more about that when we answer some of the questions. But most labs have resumed research work to a certain extent. This is why we're happy that we will be able to offer a certain number of lab projects. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. So our plan at the moment is that teaching will be a combination of on campus where we can, remote online learning, and the research opportunities. But the important thing to think about is you will not be disadvantaged at all if you cannot be on campus. So if you are unable to get to the UK for visa issues, travel issues, or just because you feel that you don't want to come over or come onto campus at the moment, you will still be able to complete the MRes. So let's have a look at the project options. So what we've designed for this year is fully or partially lab-based here. So this will mean, if possible, and you want a lab project, we will try to get you into the lab for either project 1 or project 2, or you may be lucky and be able to do this for both projects. So, and in these cases, as I say, the labs may not be open at full capacity, but many are working on being able to get into the lab at least 3 days a week, which would easily be enough to complete many projects. Or it may be one where you have a short burst of time in the lab, collect some data, and then you spend some time analysing that afterwards. You could have a purely data analytical project, which if you're on the data science stream, for example, that's what you'll be choosing anyway. But you are welcome to if you're on other streams. And then we have some other projects which we rolled out this year during the pandemic, where people wrote systematic reviews or wrote a literature review, which ended up in a sort of grant proposal. So these are ones that you could either start off with, or we could put into place if there's any change in government guidance. And as I say, we can talk more about that in the Q&A session. So the core program sessions, so these run on Wednesday morning. So aside from your 2 research projects, you'll have your Wednesday morning teaching. These could be journal clubs, debates, seminars. So our plan at the moment is we teach these online in term 1. And so they'll be recorded and they will be set at a time which is suitable if you are not in the UK and you are learning remotely. So all of our teaching would be, the guidance from the college is that it would be between 9 and 3 UK time. Typically we run these sessions between 9 and 12 UK time. But as I say, we will record these sessions as well, so no one would be disadvantaged. Assessments, we weren't planning to go into a huge amount of detail today, but they will be online or in person, depending on guidance nearer the time of the assessment. And it's important to bear in mind that because the college has not been operating fully since March, we have run a lot of these Wednesday morning sessions and our assessments online successfully over this past year. So what can you expect in the autumn? And this really is if you want to come to campus. So there's a lot of measures in place. I'm not going to read all the information on the screen, but just to say you get a welcome pack with face coverings, hand sanitizer, wipes, and then there's a lot of stations around the campus to enable you to clean things, to wash your hands. There's screens where appropriate, hand sanitizers, and then there's social distancing measures in place, where there's one-way systems around certain buildings or bi-directional in other buildings, depending on how wide the corridors are. And the guidance is, when you can stay 2 meters apart, please do. If you can't, then stay more than 1 meter apart and then wear appropriate face coverings, depending on which situation you're in. So there's signage all through the campus now, both on the floors to show which direction to go, and then protocols. And every lab will have particular inductions and protocols in place for this. So face coverings, again, I'm not going to read the whole list, but really you need to wear a face covering going through most of campus at the moment, cafes and open spaces, but not necessarily in the labs. If you're in a lab, and particularly if you're in a lab on your own, certain rooms, such as cell culture rooms, it may be one person in at a time, then you wouldn't need to. So this will all be down to your local safety officer for this. But I'm showing you all this to show that there is a lot of safety measures in place. So, and some of these I've mentioned already about the measures to keep you safe on campus, perhaps rota working or cohort working, flexible times, start times and end times in the lab as well, so you don't have to use public transport when it's busy, or hopefully you may not need to at all. Obviously there's a lot of bike facilities around London. I mentioned about one-way systems. There's also an app for people lone working, although as MRes students, we don't expect you to be lone working, so that's more for staff. And and then you can see things have changed in labs, lab space has been reconfigured. There's webinars on this, and as I've mentioned, safety inductions before you start work on campus as well. So there's a lot in place if you do want to go into the lab, and we are able to get you into the lab. There's a lot of safety measures in place. So before we go into the Q&A part of this, I just wanted to reiterate that we don't expect you to travel to campus for the autumn term if you don't want to. This is completely up to you. We're putting everything in place so you can complete the course remotely. And as I say, we have contingency plans in place if you were to start projects and then for guidance to change. And we can talk more about that in the Q&A. So we are planning the final part of the course. Most of it is in place at the moment. So we believe it's still going to be a great course, a great learning experience. So we're hoping to see you, as many of you as possible, in October. So I think with that, I will stop sharing and we can open up for some of the questions.
Great, thanks, Liz. So I hope that has answered some of the questions that people posed or that you may have had in your minds, even if you didn't put it on the form. As I said before, please do put any further questions in the chat. Feel free to put it in there. It's the easiest way to ask new things. And of course, since we're recording this, you can always come back to the recording later on and look at Liz's slides in more detail if you want. And just in addition, we're always happy to answer questions if you think of something after this meeting that we haven't addressed and you need further information. You can email any one of us. All right, so let's go on to the questions that were asked in advance. Perhaps I can take the first one. There's quite a few. There's about 20 or so questions in there. So the first question, and by the way, these are anonymous, so we don't know quite who has asked them, and that's perfectly fine. If you want to identify yourself for any reason, that's perfectly fine as well. So the first question is about remote learning, and the person is asking that they're planning to study remotely in the first term. The first question is, will the online course arrangement be totally synchronized with that on campus, or will it be staggered, both the teaching and time and the content? So simple answer to that is essentially it'll be asynchronous. So that means that what teaching is done on campus you don't have to be online at exactly the same time, because every session, if it is on campus, will be recorded and you'll be able to view it later. So you won't need to be sort of online exactly the same time. This is particularly important for students who might be in different time zones to the UK. So as you'll know from the website, we have essentially the two types of teaching. One is the research project, and that's really the major sort of teaching component, if you like. And the second one is the core program, which is lectures and seminars and things. That core program will be taught completely online in this coming term, the autumn term. After Christmas, we hope to be able to do it more on campus, but we'll have to obviously see how things go with COVID. But for the first term, it'll be all online. So that means the sessions will already be recorded, or where there are live sessions, they'll be recorded and you can view them later. So it'll be no problem if you're, for instance, in China or something and you need to view the recordings or the teaching at different times because of time zones or for other reasons. And the content obviously will be the same if it's live or recorded. The next question from the same person is, when choosing projects, will there be any limitations due to remote study? The only limitations due to remote study will be for practical reasons. So for instance, if you are going to be fully remote, then you won't be able to do any lab work, okay? Which I think stands to reason. And so in that case, you can't choose a project which has a lab work in that first term. Now, it may be that if you intend to be on campus in the second term, you may find that the project that you're able to choose has the opportunity to do some lab work after Christmas. So it doesn't mean, if you're intending to be off campus, remote during the first term, it doesn't mean you don't get any lab experience, because there are almost 3 months after Christmas where you have the potential to gain that. But of course, in that first period before Christmas, yes, obviously it would be remote type projects only, which could be obviously looking at literature, but more importantly, getting data analysis skills honed, actually analyzing some existing data from previous projects in the same lab, or perhaps public data or something like that. So quite often, even in a normal year, we would have students who don't get into the lab until after Christmas. And so from that point of view, it might not be very different. So that's the only sort of limitation in terms of what you're able to choose. It has to be something that's practical for you. The third question from that person is, have we got any study groups like support bubbles for online learning students? So this is something that we've been thinking about quite carefully, and we would like to institute this type of thing. It's very tricky when you're remote to sort of feel engaged with a degree program. And we understand that, you know, you don't get this social interaction that you would normally have when you're on campus with other students and with the staff. And we'd like to try and replicate that somehow. So we're trying to be creative in how to perhaps put students together into buddy pairs or small groups so that they can talk to each other regularly, so that you can see how other students are doing, if they have the same sorts of problems of you or not, etc., and help each other cope with any of this remote learning. So I don't have a detailed plan to show you right now, but we are planning to institute something along those lines that will help students who are, especially the remote ones, but, you know, obviously will involve people who are on campus as well, so that you get to meet everyone from your cohort. So hopefully that addresses the questions from that first person. I see the next question, I was going to hand over to you, Liz, but it just says, what is the start date? So I think we've covered that. That's the 5th of October.
So shall I take the next?
Maybe if you can take the next one, yes?
Yeah, which is, it's sort of following on from that. So asking about information about the beginning of the course. So the dates, obviously we talked about the start date, but we should say that you have the first 2 weeks before you will start any projects. And this time there will be some sessions in there. They're sort of general college, probably some of these will be online, but sort of welcome sessions. The first day, as I mentioned, we will do an online welcome session. So we will talk through the various streams. We will introduce you to stream leaders. You can hear about the graduate school, some general health and safety in there as well. So that's what we used to run in person, but obviously we'll run this online. And then over the next 2 weeks, you are able to be thinking about your projects. But importantly, and this probably comes up in one of the later questions, we will send out the project list before the start of term. So at the moment, we are compiling the list of possible projects. This will go out to you before the term starts. Traditionally, we would host a project fair where we'd gather all the project supervisors together for you to talk to. Because that's going to be not possible this time, we're going to find sort of more creative solutions to this. So if you are around and able to go to campus, some of the PIs may be on campus, so you may be able to go there if possible, or meet the PI perhaps outside of the labs, sort of socially distance outside, or you can arrange online meetings to be able to find out more about the projects. So there's definite ways that you can get a feel for the project, the supervisor and the lab, even though you may not be able to meet them face to face. So this will happen in the first 2 weeks. Then you'll be able to choose your project, and then we will give you the allocations by the end of that time. I don't know if Tim wants to add any more to that.
That's exactly what I would have said. Yes, we're actively compiling the project list now. Supervisors, obviously, it's actually holiday times in the UK at the moment, so it's difficult to get a huge amount of activity, but people are contributing projects, and we're building up that list now. And what we're going to do is make that available to you online before you start, so that you can really start to get a good idea of what the options are. Okay, the next question is, may I know when the new program specification will be available The current one on the website is for the current year. So yes, obviously, because of all the updates due to COVID, that's why the program specification for the following year is not up there right now. We will obviously be updating it, but I think if you have specific questions about the content of the program that you might have looked for in the program spec, it's better for you to ask them directly to us right now, because as I say, we won't have that finalized document until probably September. So I think if you have particular queries, it's best to ask them right now. If you need that document for certifying something else, for instance, a scholarship or funding or something, then obviously we can produce something for you. So let us know if you need something specific on paper. Next question, perhaps, Liz?
Yeah, so the next question is asking if people that have moved to London would get a priority in lab places. So the way that this will work is, obviously, if you are remote, then you're not going to be able to do a lab project. So therefore, we're expecting you not to select one of those, because the way the selection procedure will go is that you'll be able to choose your top 5 projects from the list, and you'll be able to rank those in order of priority. And then Tim runs a very sophisticated algorithm to be able to help allocate these projects. So there won't be a priority to anyone. We're assuming that if you select lab projects, that you are able to do them. And as we've mentioned, you are, even if you're not in the country at the start of term in October, if you feel you are going to be back after Christmas, then there's no reason why you can't choose a project with a lab component. And what we're asking a lot of project supervisors to do is have projects that have both a data analytical component and a lab-based one, in case of changes of plans, but this would also accommodate students who may not be in the country from October. So, and as we mentioned, we hope that everybody over the course of the year will get the type of project that they want to do.
That's right. And I would just add that, we always encourage students to speak to the supervisors, either online or in person if they're able to, even to have a look at the lab before you select that lab or that project as one of your preferences. And so during that interaction, you'll be able to ask the supervisor about how it would work with the COVID restrictions. So for instance, if you can say to them, I expect to be on campus from January, is this a project where I could do some lab work in January and February? You can find out that information from them. Because every project is quite different, and exactly when and how much lab work is doable within a given project, it's not going to be easy for us to factor that in the project allocation process. So as Liz said, if you choose a project amongst your preferences, we would expect you to have checked whether that is feasible or possible for you to do. So as Liz said, if you're going to be online, remote, and that project requires you to do some lab work in the first term, then you should not choose that project. So it's going to be up to you guys as students to work out in discussion with the supervisor which projects are feasible for you and which are not. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Again, on projects, I would like to know, if possible, the list of projects or all of the available information. I think we've kind of already covered that. The list will be available from some point in September. We don't know exactly when, because it depends on when the supervisors contribute their projects. We have a deadline next week, but we usually get a few late contributions, and we will be building up the project list further after that as well, to make sure that we've got the right amount of online available remote projects, for instance. So you will have that certainly before you start the course. If you want some other information earlier on, I'd encourage you to look at the websites of the Faculty of Medicine. So anywhere in the Faculty of Medicine at Imperial College, you can potentially do a project. And if particular areas interest you, then make an inquiry with the group leader. Say that you're an incoming MRes student and you're really interested in their work, and are they contributing any projects to our program. If they were, then that's great. And if they were not thinking of that, then maybe it'll encourage them to do so. You know, generally the supervisors throughout the faculty and beyond are very keen to get hold of our students because we have a fairly high admissions criterion. So they know that you guys are all quite good. So certainly feel free to make those interactions and inquiries with potential supervisors even before you get the project list. It's perfectly fine to do that.
Okay.
Next one.
Well, I think the next one, Tim's probably pretty much covered about the projects. And I think I mentioned that you'll be allocated to the projects, hopefully at the end of the 2 weeks induction period. That's what we endeavour to do. Sometimes in case of sort of juggling around a bit, it may be sort of the Monday or the Tuesday of the following week, but generally it's as close to that as possible. And so I will answer the second one as well, because that links into the project as well. So someone's asking, they're a mature student, they have some work experience and a network of contacts. So what they're wondering if they can basically design their own project or bring their own project in an area they've been interested in. So this is something that we do allow on the course. As Tim said, we get a lot of projects submitted, generally a lot of interest from the Faculty of Medicine. So the list of projects generally is far longer than the number of students we have. But we do have occasions where people want to design their own project. So if that is the case, we would encourage you to speak to us early about that. Tell us what kind of project and who you would like to work with, and then we can work with you on seeing if this is feasible and being able to design the project.
Yeah, and just to add, it's feasible potentially to do part of a project at an external organization as long as you tell us about it and we can investigate that beforehand. So for instance, we do have people doing projects at the Crick Institute in London, at the Institute of Cancer Research, for instance. We've also had several people doing projects at AstraZeneca at their labs and their offices in Cambridge. So we do work with a number of external partners, and the students that have done those projects have had a really good time and found that to be a really useful experience. Okay, so the next question is on tuition fees. And the question is essentially, if you aren't able to do 2 lab-based projects, will there be a tuition fee reduction in respect of not having had as much lab experience as you might have hoped for? This is a very tricky one, of course. I should start out by saying that anything to do with finance and tuition fees is actually not a decision that we can make as a program organizing team. It's something that's made at a faculty and college level. So I would probably be not thanked by my colleagues for making any statements on it. We do believe that even if you are going to be working partially remotely, you will be able to get a good experience from this program this year. Now, if you are really desperate to get lab experience, we currently think that we will be able to offer lab experience both in Project 1 and in Project 2. However, the amount of lab experience and the intensity of that lab experience in Project 1 is probably going to be reduced compared to a normal year because of the COVID restrictions. Now, we don't yet know quite how much reduction that will be. For instance, the number of lab-based projects and the amount of lab time in each of those. But we think it probably will be reduced compared to a normal year, as you can understand. However, if you still want to get lab experience, as Liz said before, we expect you to be able to get much more lab experience in Project 2, which, don't forget, is a whole 6 months. So that's quite a lot of time to get that experience. And in addition, don't forget that you will not be idle during these other times when you're not in the lab. You'll be learning really valuable other skills in data analysis and bioinformatics, literature reviews and all that kind of stuff, which are a really important component of any training in biomedical research anyway. And in fact, a lot of students in the past who've done lab projects have told us that they really appreciate having extra time to do this data analysis and bioinformatics training. And that's actually what you guys will get more of this year than the traditional cohort would. So I think you're going to get some quite strong positives out of the slightly alternative way that we're able, that we're offering to do things this year. But having said that, if you want lab experience, we expect you to be able to get some. So having, gone through all of that, at the moment, I don't believe the college is planning to give any fee reductions. We certainly believe that you will get very useful experience and you'll be able to complete all the learning outcomes as specified in the handbook and the learning and the program spec. So we feel that you're going to get a very good training that will be worth those fees. So if you do have further concerns about fees, then obviously get in touch with us. But as I said at the beginning, it's a decision that is not open to us as a program team. It's something that has to be made for several different reasons, including being fair to all students in the college. It needs to be made at a higher level. So I hope I've addressed some of those concerns. And obviously the situation with that may evolve as time goes by as well.
Okay. I think the next couple of questions are about visas. So the next person has said, will we need to register before the online program starts? If so, is a visa essential for this? So Tim may have more information, but my belief is if you've been offered a place on the course and you have paid to join the course and you intend to do the first portion of the course online, then a visa is not going to be essential. Obviously, if you're planning to come over, then that's a different matter. But if you are intending to work remotely for Project One, we're not going to be insisting on a visa.
Yes, that's my understanding as well. I don't know, Noelia may have more information from the admin point of view, but just to say, in a normal year, we often have a few students coming from abroad who get their visas late and do join us late. And so, it's not uncommon for students to sort of start remotely without their visa just for a few weeks. Now, in this case, it might be that period is a little bit longer, but certainly you must register for the course, enroll and be sort of officially registered on the course in October. Okay, so Noelia, do you have any more information about the visa question?
Well, it is my understanding that if you are not coming to campus for the first semester and you are only joining the course online, you will not need your visa for that period of time. So you will have more time to get your visa for the rest of the course. And we have also some questions about your CAS number for your visa, and I would like to redirect you to the International Student Support Office. I can let you know the email address. You can also find it on the website, because this is a department that will have all the information regarding visas for you.
Yeah, so I think that was the next question in the list, wasn't it, about
Yes.
CAS numbers and registration and stuff. I don't know whether we have the contact details for the person who asked that question. So if you haven't made yourself known to us, then please email Noelia about that, and she'll point you in the right direction of the relevant college department. Okay, the next one is about a scholarship. So the question is, for students whose studies are funded by scholarship and receive a stipend, what is the process to be paid? Are there forms to complete and agreements to be signed, and when will this be done? I think the easy answer is yes, there are forms to complete and, and bureaucracy to go through, although hopefully not too much. Perhaps Noelia, you might be able to give more information on that. There's a bursary form, etc.
I believe this is dealt by the bodies who deal with the scholarship. So once again, I would have to redirect you to the right department who will deal with the scholarship. So please feel free to contact me directly, and then I can put you in touch with the right people.
That's right. So normally scholarships are funded by many different funders. And so what needs to happen is for your funder to confirm to Imperial that they have awarded you a scholarship, and they have to actually pay some money and then Imperial then pays that to you. That's the way it normally happens. It doesn't come straight from your funder to you. Normally it goes through Imperial, that's my understanding. And there is a bursary form that would need to be completed, and you would normally need to do that in September in order for you to be paid in early October. Okay, but again, if you've got specific queries about that, please email Noelia and she can connect you with the right department around.
Yes, it'll basically be tuition fees, so I'm very happy to put you in touch with them.
Okay.
All right.
So the next question says, I would like to know if Imperial College has prepared some of the extra accommodation facilities mentioned in the previous meeting. Now, it's our belief that obviously Imperial has a certain number of student accommodation. Obviously, this student accommodation is available for undergraduate and postgraduates. To our knowledge, there hasn't been information actually about additional accommodation on top of this. So I think this is something that we can investigate further for you. But at the moment, we don't really know any more than that. I don't know if Tim or Noelia want to say anything on this.
Yeah, I think, as you said, our understanding is that there will be accommodation available in the usual way, but with some, reduced occupancy, presumably because of the COVID restrictions. You should be in touch with the regular departments at Imperial who deal with that to find out. Yeah, if you're having trouble, then again, we can try and put you in touch with the right people. I think we may have mentioned on the previous call that there was a number of potential extra venues for accommodation, such as hotels and things. The previous call was done during lockdown, and of course hotels were completely empty at that point. Now that we're out of the lockdown, I think that's less of an option, but I don't know. Honest answer is I don't know whether Imperial has sort of tried to use any of this extra space at the moment, so we'd have to look that up for you.
Yes, I would like to mention again that there is updated information about accommodation on the website. So if you go onto the Imperial College website and look on accommodation, there is plenty of details, and it keeps being updated. So please have a look at that.
Okay. And in case you're not aware, there's a very detailed COVID web page on the college website as well. So if you have worries or queries about how Imperial is dealing with the COVID situation, then there's a lot of information.
And I think I put the link in my talk that had the link to the COVID web page.
I think somebody may have their microphone on. Did that person want to ask a question verbally, or if not, can you just make sure you mute or type the question into the chat, which we'll come to in a moment. Okay, the next question is somebody who's living close to London in Hampshire, and they're wondering whether they should find accommodation for term 1, even though they're planning to work remotely, as far as I understood it. And they're worried that if they don't find accommodation for term 1, they might find it hard to find that accommodation starting in January. Now, obviously, finding accommodation in London is always tricky. It's never a fun thing to do, can be quite stressful. Actually, perhaps we're not the best people to advise because we don't all live in London and obviously not as students. However, you often see people trying to find temporary accommodation for a shorter period than 1 year. As I understand it, the sort of minimum typical lease for a rental contract is 6 months. So if you were looking for accommodation, say, from January till the summer, June or something, you probably would be able to find something in that time. And I think, my advice would be, you probably don't need to try and find accommodation in London in term 1. You probably ought to be able to find something starting in January. And obviously, it won't disadvantage you if you're planning to be remote in term 1, as we've already said. If I've misunderstood the question and it was more about can you do a lab project in term one, then obviously, you know, you need to be able to make it into London. That doesn't mean you have to be residing in London. You could be coming in, commuting in by train or something like that. So I hope I've dealt with it. If I misunderstood the question, please type something in the chat. We'll try and address it.
And actually, just to follow up on that, that if you were to do a lab project where with reduced access and you were only in the lab a day or two a week, then maybe a commute from Hampshire or somewhere outside Imperial would work. So that's again something you could talk about with your project supervisor. So,
exactly.
So moving on.
Normally we would recommend. Sorry, I was just going to say. Normally we'd recommend people try to live, you know, reasonably close by in London. But everybody in London has, you know, in normal times has a quite long commute. Even if you live only a few miles outside the centre, it can be quite a long time. And coming in from further out is sometimes not much longer in terms of commute time.
Yeah. So there's a few questions on a similar theme coming up. So this one here says, I'm currently completing an MSc course finishing in September, which means I will not have any official document before the start of the MRes course. So can we give some advice whether there's some kind of document they should request from their current university? So I must confess I don't completely know the answer to this. So I was wondering if Tim or Noelia might want to add any information on this.
I expect Noelia has a good information.
Well, I don't have much information on this actually, but I have seen that some students are offer holders are trying to meet their conditions, and that is something that admissions is dealing with. And I would put you in touch with admissions because they will have the right answer for that. I'm afraid once again we don't have all the answers, but there should be an official document that is probably can serve the same purpose.
Yeah, I think correspond with the admissions team in the registry. So that's PG admissions, the email address. But normally they will require the official document. Normally they would require it on paper, but now because of the remote working and everything, they are allowing people to do that electronically. So you can upload a scanned copy. Again, I think they accept those by email even. I'm not sure if there's a more sort of online system for people to upload them to, but certainly you can send through scanned copies. If you don't get that official document until the end of September, it's not a problem because, you know, we're used to people who would be completing late like that. And we would just, obviously we have to wait until you have the official confirmation. If you're worried about it, you can perhaps get one of your current course leads from the current course you're on to write a letter of recommendation indicating, you know, that they expect you to pass. But that's not something we as the program team require. I would only do that if the registry asks you to. Noelia, did you have any more you wanted to say on that?
No, I was thinking on the same line. The next question is on the same lines about final transcript and diploma. Where should that document be uploaded? And I believe that many of our holders have been uploading the documents on the system, on the admissions system, but some of them have been emailing the admissions department with their diplomas, and that is another possible way.
I think the next question actually is one more in your area, Noelia, with admissions as well. It's somebody with a deferred offer
Yes.
who would be coming in September, October 21, and they're wondering if they will get an updated offer letter.
Yes, I'm once again, I'm afraid I'm not sure if you will get an official offer letter from admissions, but I can tell you that once the deferral has been approved, and as you said, the status has been updated as a deferred offer, it means that it will be up until the next year, and in the next year you will be contacted by the admissions department to asking you to confirm that you still wish to attend the course, so the offer stays.
Yeah. So that's my understanding as well. Again, if you need a letter, you know, confirming the deferment or something like that of the offer, again, that's possibly something that we could provide as a program team for you if you need it for a scholarship or something like that. All right, we're getting towards the bottom of the list, but I see one or two questions in the chat as well. The next one is, how do we send confirmation of meeting the conditions of the degree when we don't have a physical degree? I've already emailed the admissions address, but with no reply. I think we've kind of covered that you should be able to upload or email an electronic copy of your degree certificate and transcript. As always, if you're not getting responses from the admissions team, you're welcome to contact us. But as you've already seen, we don't always have all the information at our fingertips. So when it comes to the sort of process and the electronic systems and what is and isn't accepted at what times, it's something that we have to rely on the registry for. But certainly they are accepting electronic copies of degree certificates and things.
Yes, sorry to add, I would like to reiterate that they are accepting the electronic copies, and I would also like to say that the admissions department are extremely busy at the moment, so please be patient with them. They might not be able to give you an answer straight away. It might take a few days.
Yeah.
Liz, and I suppose, I was going to say the last one again is a sort of visa transcript question as well, saying they've emailed their unofficial results, but it doesn't say whether that's to us or to registry, as the transcript has not yet arrived. Would the offer be processed, or will they have to wait for the official transcript in order to get their CAS? And they're worried because visa processing will take a while in their home country. So again, I think that's one really for following up with registry to see what information they've got and what they're happy to move forward with that. I can see Noelia nodding on that.
My understanding is, again, Imperial cannot make the offer unconditional until they have seen, you know, official proof of your degree that you've met the conditions. And you, as my understanding is, you need to have that unconditional offer to get the CAS. So I suspect you probably will have to wait. But again, if you've got questions, ask the admissions team. All right. So we've completed all the questions that were submitted beforehand, but we've got one or two that are in the chat. The first one is an interesting one. Somebody says, how much is a mask in London? Okay. Well, actually, I don't know because I haven't bought one in London, but there certainly is a range. One thing I can say is my teenage daughter is making them at home, and she's offering them to anybody for £5 a piece. They're very nice looking masks.
I do have one myself.
But no, honestly, you can get them in lots of different places. Very different to how it was in the early stages of the lockdown. I think, you know, there's no shortage of supply now, and it's, you know, it's relatively straightforward. I don't know if Liz or Noelia is actually more in central London than we are. I don't know if you have any advice on that.
No, my only advice is that don't worry about the type of mask. Any mask is all right and will go with the regulations as long as it's a face covering. You don't need a clinical mask. You can buy simple masks, one-use mask in pharmacies. Then you can make yourself some fabric masks. You can buy masks online that are reusable and washable. Anything is available. Yeah. Don't worry about the type of mask because you just need a face covering.
Yeah, supermarkets I think sell packs of them now, and as you say, pharmacists, etc. So, and also if you start a lab project, then you will get a welcome pack which includes 3 washable masks through Imperial as well. Obviously that doesn't help you before you get into the lab, but that would be some additional ones for you to have.
So yeah, I think the advice would be bring some with you if you can. ideally go for ones which are washable, because otherwise you'll get through huge numbers of disposable ones. But certainly it's quite straightforward to get them in London, you know, when you need to.
Yeah.
I
wondered if you wanted to answer the next one, Tim, as it's data science.
Okay, yeah, I didn't spot that. Right, so it's a question, does the data science stream students have lab-based projects? That's fairly easy to answer. No, normally they don't. However, we're not restricting it. So, you know, if you're a data science student and you really, really would like some lab experience in some area, or even if you just would like to see how the data that you're going to be analyzing is generated, you know, we're flexible. We can possibly, well, if you want to go for a full-on lab-based project, certainly you can do that in the same way that other students will be doing. But if it's more about seeing how, you know, high throughput imaging data or genomics data is generated, that might well be possible just by a short lab visit to the appropriate facility, depending on, you know, the project that you're working on. So short answer is people don't normally do that on the data science, but depending on the student's interests, you know, we're quite flexible to trying to arrange something that, you know, that you're interested in.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, a lot of the supervisors that submit projects to the data science stream are lab-based research groups. So you would get an opportunity, as Tim mentioned, to, if you want to see how the data is generated, etc., then there's definitely that opportunity there. So
yeah, in fact, we would strongly encourage it because it helps you understand more about the data. You'll get a better feel for how to process and model the data if you've actually been into the lab, seen how it works, seen what the problems are, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we've definitely had data science stream students on sort of imaging projects, etc., where they've been able to see the mass spectrometer and how the imaging data is collected. So, but speak to the potential supervisors and they'll be able to tell you more about that. So that leads on to the next question, which is saying about choosing the projects. Obviously, I remember that we can freely choose the project. So this we did discuss a bit last time. So when the project list comes out, we've asked the project supervisors to say which stream that they think the project is most suited to. So we have the 8 streams within this MRes. So for example, a project supervisor might say, oh, it's most suitable to the general stream, to BMR, but they may say that perhaps MHD, the microbiome, is the secondary stream, so it's also suitable for that. Or it may be the other way around. So how we tend to do it is you're advised to choose at least a certain number of the projects from your own stream, but you can also choose projects that are sort of priority for other streams. But as the name priority suggests, it would mean that if someone, so say you're from BMR and you choose a project that is on the MHD list, if an MHD student chooses it, they will get priority over you. But if the MHD students don't choose it, then you may likely get that project. So this is how we do it, because, and some of the other streams, the smaller streams that are more specialized, may not get such a wide range of projects, obviously, submitted for theirs. So this way we think it's fair that students can get a choice, but are also able to get ones that are in their sort of subject area.
Yeah, so obviously choice of projects and things is a very important factor for students. And just to reiterate, it's entirely, the allocation of projects is entirely driven by student preferences. It's not driven by the preferences of the supervisors. It's not driven by funding preferences or where you're from or even your background, okay? We get you to submit your usually top 5 preferences, and as Liz says, there are some rules around priority of each stream to its own project. But we feel that that makes it the fairest way of allocating projects, so that, you know, if you are interested in a specific project and no one else chooses it, you should get that project. I would say, though, that we always have a lot of clashes. There are always projects which are very popular. There are supervisors who are very popular. And so if we ask you to submit your top 5 preferences, you should be happy to do any one of those 5 projects, okay? It's not a feasible attitude to say, okay, I've given you my 5 top projects, but I'm only interested in doing project number 1, because it's actually quite likely that we won't be able to allocate you your top choice. I can't remember if Liz already mentioned, but if you don't get allocated your top choice in the first round, so for the project number 1, we will prioritize you in the second round, so that you're more likely to get your top choice. But then again, if you choose very popular projects, we still can't guarantee that you'll get the first choice. So it is driven by student choices, but with the caveat that each stream gets preference on its own list, and that where there are clashes, ultimately we have to allocate to try and maximize the overall student preference.
And just to add a final bit to that, in certain streams, best to talk to the stream lead, because they may like you to choose a project from their sort of the stream priority list, perhaps for one of the projects, and maybe they will encourage you or allow you to choose from any other stream for the second project, or vice versa. So each stream may have its own particular sort of wishes for the students.
Okay, and I think actually that answers the question after the next one.
Yeah.
But the next one is about isolation. Somebody's asking about fee and accommodation during this time. Should overseas students arrive 14 days before the start of term? And they're interested to know whether Imperial will charter an airplane for overseas students, which is an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. But to answer the first bit, you only need to isolate or quarantine if you are coming from one of the countries that is on the quarantine list. So, for example, at the moment, Spain is on the quarantine list of the UK government, requiring everybody coming back from Spain into the UK to quarantine for 14 days. So, yes, you would need to factor that in. However, because we're saying that any student can pursue the course completely remotely in the first term, that doesn't mean that you have to arrive 2 weeks before the start of term. You could arrive on the first day of term. You could even not arrive. You could still be in Spain, for instance, and still start the course. Obviously, if you're somebody who really does want to be on campus as much as possible and hopefully pursue a lab project, then you would need to factor that in, because your project would not start though until week 3 of the course. So actually, you could still arrive on the first day of term in week 1 and still have 2 weeks quarantining and still starting the lab on that 3rd week. So I don't think actually coming much earlier is necessary from the point of view of COVID. You may want to arrive a bit earlier if you're trying to find accommodation and that type of thing, the usual reasons for arriving a bit earlier. I don't know if Liz or Noelia have anything to add about that.
No, I think it's going to be different for individuals, isn't it, this time? And yeah, you'll just have to plan according to which country you're coming from, I think. But as Tim said, we are happy to give any advice. So if you want to email us separately about anything, we'll try as much as possible to answer these. So the next one, I think we've pretty much answered, as Tim said. And I think the next one we probably have as well, can we only apply for lab projects within our own stream? I think we've discussed sort of the priority system there. And once we send out the project list, we can write down all this information for you when the project list goes out to sort of reconfirm some of these options for you. And obviously information will go out about how to choose the projects, because that will be via an online form.
Okay, next there is a private question, which means only I can see it. So I'm going to read it out loud. It is anonymous. I'm interested on how flexible is the switching in between streams? And also, is it possible to have 2 projects which are belonging to 2 different streams?
Okay, so as you know, every student belongs to one stream, okay? And you've been made an offer on a specific stream, okay? And that's what we would normally expect you to pursue. However, it's true that some students do switch streams now and again, not very often actually. And obviously if there is any switching between streams, we need to get that done as soon as possible at the beginning of the year. The criteria for switching the streams would obviously be that the stream leads on those respective streams agree, i.e. the one that you're leaving agrees that you can leave, and the one that you're going to agrees that you can start with them. So it's possible, we don't encourage it, but it's possible. If you are thinking about this, then please get in touch, and we will have a discussion about it. Sometimes it can depend a little bit on, if you're on a scholarship or something like that, there might be restrictions, but for most people, it is a feasible possibility. And in terms of doing a project from outside your stream, as Liz just mentioned, that's perfectly feasible, bearing in mind that the people on the other stream where you've chosen the project from, they would get priority on that project. So you are able to do projects outside your stream, but only if the students on that stream have not chosen it. Okay.
Okay, so the next one says, if you're doing the MRes as part of our PhD degree, will our PhD supervisors be able to submit a project specifically for you? So that kind of goes in line with what we were saying about designing your own project. So yes, a PhD supervisor could, and it's often advisable perhaps to do one of your projects in the area that you're going to do your PhD in. But we also encourage students to get a wide range of skills and techniques over the course of the MRes. And before you specialize in your PhD, this may be a good time to try some new techniques. So we leave this completely up to you. So it's something really to talk to your PhD supervisors, potential PhD supervisors about.
Yeah, that's an important point to reiterate, that one of the main sort of themes of the course is that you get diverse experience. So the two projects should be in different areas, so in different labs or with different research groups or with different supervisors. Some students are very keen to stay with the same supervisor in project 2, but we usually don't allow that because we need to make sure that you're getting diverse experience. Okay, if you're a special case, particularly with respect to PhD funding, then come and talk to us. But generally, they should be in 2 different research groups.
Yeah. So it may be that you want to do your first project elsewhere and then your second one before your PhD in that lab. So.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and just say, if you are doing that, then please ask the supervisors to let us know that they're putting this project forward. It's effectively for you because you're a potential PhD student in their lab. So it's important that we know that so we don't accidentally allocate it to somebody else. Okay, the next one is, I think it's necessary to deal with actual lab directly if we are playing with stream computing. Not quite sure what I understand by that, but I think possibly you're talking about being in touch with the lab that generates the data for a data science project. Yes, very important. As we said before, you can maybe even visit the lab and go and see how data is generated. And certainly it makes a huge difference to be in touch with the people who have generated the data when you're analyzing it. We strongly encourage that. So no problem if I understood the question right. If I didn't understand the question right, please put something in the chat to explain it and we'll try and address that.
Okay,
otherwise,
and then
we're on to our last one.
Yeah, the last one so far. So if you do want to ask any other questions, pop them in now. Is, will project 2 have a higher criterion of coursework compared with project 1? And the answer is no. The projects are equally weighted. So for both of the projects, you will be writing them up in the form of a report. There's slightly different styles of report between project 1 and project 2. In project 1, you will be asked to do a poster presentation. At the end of this, write your work up as a poster, present it to examiners, which will either be online or hopefully face-to-face. And then project 2, it's an oral presentation at the end of this. So, but they're equally weighted, and you also get contributing marks from your lab supervisor as well.
That's right. So, yeah, essentially there's no extra coursework in Project 2. However, we should say, you know, we expect that after you've done one project, you actually are a lot more experienced and hopefully a bit more efficient and more professional in your attitude to data science, biomedical science research. And one of the things that we ask you to do during Project 2 is the grant writing exercise. So again, if you've seen the description of the course, you'll know that that's one of the main components, which is assessed. And that happens during the early part of Project 2. So it will actually be a bit harder to pursue your research and be doing this grant writing at the same time. The reason we do that is that's because that's what professional research scientists have to do all the time. They have to write grants, they have to pursue research, and probably do quite a lot of teaching and admin and things as well. So you will not only be pursuing your second research project, you'll also be doing the grant writing exercise. Having said that, you know, it doesn't last for the entire part of Project 2. It's about the first 2 months, and the only taught sessions on that are about once a week for 3 or 4 weeks. So it's not very high intensity, but you will have to do it in parallel with Project 2. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of the questions, both asked beforehand and in the chat. So if anybody has anything else left to ask, please put it in the chat right now. I'm not seeing anything. So I think other than that, it's probably time for us to sign off. We've done just over the hour, so I think that worked quite well. Again, just to reiterate, it's recorded. You can come back to this later on and you know, listen to us if you really want to, but try and understand the answers. If you have further questions, feel free to contact us by email. And we are looking forward to meeting you all, either in person or virtually, many of you virtually, in October. We will have lots of getting to know you and icebreakers and social type sessions in the early week or two. We're trying to work that out. And we're looking forward to you starting and having a really great year pursuing biomedical research. So thanks for joining this Q&A session. And we will be in touch. And good luck with the last few weeks before you start at Imperial. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.